Hi, this is Mike Hibbert. I'm back with another tutorial on the subject of Python programming. This time round we're going to have a look at the subject of classes. Now, classes are what programmers use to model real-life situations or things in real life. For instance, a web developer might use a class to model a page. And the page might have various different features like a title or a header or body copy, or it might even have some different types of behavior like Ajax. In other situations, programmers might use classes to mimic users in a system. So a user might have a username or a password, and we'd use a class to basically identify them within our programming system and then process their information using that class. Yet another example is potentially a robot, for instance. Somebody designs one specific type of robot. It might have some core functionality, and we might want all of our robots that we design in the future to have that basic functionality, but we don't want to rewrite the code. So this is where classes come into play, because classes allow you to define a basic set of functions that something can have, and then you can then build on that and have derivatives of that and different permutations of that basic system, and then enhance it and bring in new functionality. Now, the example I prepared for you is basically the example of a bird. Now, birds are all pretty similar in the feature that they all make a noise of some description. Well, all the ones I know do anyway, and they all fly. So I'm going to model a bird. Now, the first thing we need to do is we need to define a class. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to define the bird class, which is the basic set of bird, and then we're going to basically go on to then model two further other types of bird, which then modify the basic functionality of a bird so that they can be used as specific instances or different variations of the class and type bird. So we've written class bird, which basically tells Python this is going to be a class, and the following lines, which are indented, will be its definition. With all languages, you have something called a constructor. Now, the constructor basically is the code that happens whenever you create an instance of a class. So, in the instance of our bird class, we want to basically say that when this class is instance, when it is init or initialized, we want to pass in a parameter of type kind and type call. Now, they can be anything, but in the case of this, they're going to be strings. So kind is going to be what kind of bird, and call is going to say what kind of noise does it do, what kind of call does the bird have. Now, you'll notice this thing here, which is the word self. With classes, what we're basically doing inside of the Python interpreter is we're creating an area of memory that basically stores the data for a bird. Now, if we made more than one bird, we'd have separate different areas of memory where those birds' data would exist. So when we pass that self word across, what we're really passing is a reference to where that specific bird that we're dealing with right here, right now, is stored. Now, we'll pass those parameters in to the function. Now, what we're going to do with them? Well, we want to remember them for future use. So what we're going to do is we're going to say self.call equals call. This basically creates a variable within the current version of this bird, and then sets the parameter that we've just passed across here into there to store it for later use. And the same with our kind variable here. We create another variable within this bird's instance and assign it the kind of bird that it is. And that's all we're going to do with the constructor. Now later on we're going to give the bird some what we call core functionality, or you might know them as member methods. Now we've got a method here, or a class method, that says do underscore call with the argument of self. So we're saying do the call on the current version of this bird that we're using. And with that, all we're literally going to do is we're going to print out a string. Within that string, if you saw my previous tutorial, you'll have noticed that we're using this pattern again, where we're putting place markers in of type string, signified by the S, for 2 words within this string. Then we have the percentage, just to say that the next few parts of this line are going to signify what actually goes in there. Open something called a tuple, and if you don't know what tuples are, I suggest you go and Google those. I might even do that in a tutorial in the future if I get enough requests to cover things like strings and tuples and lists and that sort of thing. Any comments down below, that'd be fine. So what we're going to do is we're going to pass in this current instance's version of kind and of call, and we're going to put kind in this slot here and call in that slot there. Right, so that's our basic bird. Now say we have a specific kind of bird that we want to make. We now have the basic functionality to create a bird and have it do a call, so we don't have to write that again. All we do from now on is create another class instance that can use that ability. So the first bird we're going to do is a parrot. Now you'll notice in the line above, when we put bird, we didn't have these brackets like we do down here, and that's because bird is what we call a base class. It doesn't inherit from anything. It doesn't have any other functionality other than the functionality that we defined underneath here. But the parrot does. It inherits its abilities from our bird class, so therefore we basically put the word bird in brackets there. If it inherited from any other class, we could then put another comma and go other class, if needs be. Not in this case though, because we're just inheriting from the bird, and we're going to make a new class of the type parrot. Again, we make the constructor, and in this case we don't have any arguments other than the current instance of the bird. There are no kind or call, because a parrot, by our definition, should have a certain set of parameters that are fixed, so we don't pass those into to the parrot instance, but we do the next line instead. We go bird dot init, or call the bird's constructor with our current reference to this bird that we're creating. Then we pass in the parameters to the bird instance, which says pass the kind up here as a parrot and the call as car, which basically was a parrot does. And we're going to make another class, a different bird type, a cuckoo this time. Again, we're going to not pass any variables in the class constructor. We're going to pass it to the bird and then hard code in cuckoo as the type of bird, or the kind of bird, sorry, and then its call is obviously, yes, you've guessed it, cuckoo. Right, now we're going to test this. So as always, when this is the main script we're going to run, we want the name, if it's main, to run the following functions. We're going to make an instance of parrot by saying parrot equals the class kind parrot. I'm going to make an instance of cuckoo by saying cuckoo equals the class, or a new version of the class cuckoo. Then we're going to say parrot do call. Now notice in our parrot we haven't defined that here, but in our base class bird we have. So everything that bird has, parrot can use, and the same goes for the cuckoo. So we're also going to get the cuckoo to do their call also, and that should basically output, if we're lucky, that a parrot goes car and a cuckoo goes cuckoo, if all goes well. So let's run that. Let's see what happens. There you go. In the debug IO window we see the output from the program where we've inserted the kind of bird and its call, and for each instance of these classes which inherit from the bird class, it outputs the correct line. Now that's just a very basic example. You can do all sorts of classes. You can model anything and everything that physically exists, or even exists as purely an idea that you've thought up. Classes can be used in all sorts of applications, from web applications to desktop applications to building AI systems, even computer games. And especially with computer games, classes like parrot and cuckoo, well, you can imagine those being used in something like Angry Birds. Right, that's the end of this tutorial. If you've got any comments, then please enter them down below. Any suggestions, please give them as well. I'm perfectly happy to do any suggestions that anybody would like to see tutorials on. Right, that's all from me. Thanks very much for listening, and thanks for your time, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like this video if it was doing you any good as a programmer. Bye.